All right, people, good afternoon. Hope you guys are doing well on this Hall of Fame game day. That is right. We are just a couple of hours away from the first preseason game of the 2025 season. And even though it may not be too much of a game, it is a game and it gives us something to watch that isn't just clips from last year or college tape of our new players. It's an actual live game. And the Seahawks did have a practice today because obviously they are not playing in the Hall of Fame game. They will be playing their first game in a week. Therefore, we did indeed have a VMAC practice. This was not a walkthrough. This was an actual practice, so there's a little bit more to talk about. Although I will admit, most of the conversations revolved around Charles Cross because of the news we got earlier today concerning his finger injury. So we do have a little bit more information on that. Not really anything all that new, but just to go over some of the things that were passed along from the various beat reporters. You got Condota here talking about Cross. He mentions that Cross was almost certainly not going to play in preseason games anyway, which, I mean, I don't know if he's just taking that as a given or if that's what he's been told. But if that's the case, then this really shouldn't be all that much, right? Because again, it's been said many times now that there's every reason to believe he'll be ready to go for the first regular season game. And I don't know if he actually knows for sure that Cross wasn't going to play, but if he wasn't going to play, then all he's going to miss really is some training camp time that I don't know if it's necessarily going to be that big of a deal, because it's not like he wasn't participating previously. He was playing through the finger injury for a while there, and this just means he's going to miss a little bit of that time. I don't think it's going to drastically affect him, and it's also going to give us an opportunity to see some things with the other offensive linemen on this team, who can fill in, who can move around, who can play at positions that they weren't typically expected to be playing. So still mostly I don't want to call it good news, because an injury to any player for any reason is probably not good, but seems pretty minimal in its importance. Apparently, nobody really noticed this at the time, but if you looked at the videos and pictures of Cross yesterday, um, yeah, excuse me, wow, his fingers were taped up. So this, to the people who were paying very close attention, maybe this isn't surprising. But I guess not a lot of people noticed that, because I didn't hear anything about it until this morning. So there you go. I guess not a lot of focus on the hands. And here's McDonald talking about Cross in a more direct way. Dislocated finger, few weeks recovery. And it was said specifically, I believe, that yes, McDonald said that Cross is expected to return between the Seahawks' final preseason game and the regular season opener. So there's a pretty firm timetable here. There's seemingly no reason to believe anything else. And that gives us a target, and every reason to believe that target is going to get hit right now. So nothing to worry about too big here. And the worst has been averted for the time being on the front of Charles Cross. Now, beyond the Charles Cross discussion, again, that dominated pretty much everything today. I think that the highlight of the day was another Nick Emmanwori interception, a diving interception off of Jalen Milroe. He continues to show what he brings to the table here. That makes me so excited to have him as a Seahawk for the 2025 season and beyond. Diving interception, and he runs down to the fans at the fence bottom of the berm, and he signs a football for a kid, so he was pretty excited, and understandably so. He's made now 2 big plays in camp, and there was this one tweet from, I think it was Corbin, who was talking about how he's convinced that Emmanwori is actually like 6'4.5" and about 245 pounds, which is significantly more than he's listed at. And he's convinced that this guy is, based on his description, bigger than Cam Chancellor, bigger than most off-ball linebackers these days. In fact, actually, if he's 245, that's a good amount heavier than most inside linebackers these days. So Exciting to hear about this stuff. The fact that he's making plays in coverage now as well. Now, I haven't seen any tape of the interception here. I know the previous one was off a deflection, so that's kind of a different thing. But regardless, he's putting himself in positions to make plays on the ball, and that's another big play. So that's probably the highlight of the day. Other standouts, according to Greg Bell, we had D'Anthony Bell, so that's another safety. So both backup safeties doing stuff. I know Emmanwori is probably going to be more of a slot corner for us this year, but both our backup safeties are making a little bit of a push here. We got Oluwatimi also listed as a standout by Greg Bell here. Seems like the center job is his, and I mean, I think that's okay. Again, I do believe that there's a pretty good floor with Oluwatimi. I don't know about the ceiling. I feel like Oluwatimi is going to be best defined by how he works with the rest of the offensive line rather than anything he does individually. And again, I think that's fine. It does leave us in a little bit of an interesting spot with Sundle, and also to a certain extent, I'd say Christian Haynes. But we'll talk more about that later in this video because we did hear some stuff about that from a couple of the beat reporters as well. Anthony Bradford got to play at right guard today, so they are still doing that rotation. And I want to talk about that before the end of this video as well, because that is, I would say, suboptimal, that they're still trying to figure out who their interior linemen are going to be. And apparently Christian Haynes was working as the backup center today and did not play very well. I'll talk about why in a minute here, but Christian Haynes, I mean, if it was a Haynes versus Oluwatimi battle for center today, seems to have pushed things pretty firmly into the Oluwatimi camp. And again, I get it. Like Haynes, he's not played center before in an actual game. He did it at the Senior Bowl, so I get it. But I thought it would be a cool idea. One thing that's been going on... Oh, hold on. Let me freeze that. One thing that's been going on in camp so far, the DeMarcus Lawrence working with Gray Zabel. I mean, DeMarcus Lawrence, longtime NFL veteran, been in this league for a minute, made Pro Bowls, had great seasons, helping educate and teach Gray Zabel about NFL football. And, you know, this is part of the reason why I really liked that DeMarcus Lawrence signing. I do think he's still a very good player, and he should give us good value on that contract on the field, but there's something to be said about having a player like this that has seen everything and been through everything and has this kind of knowledge to impart onto the next generation. Gray Zabel's 10 years younger than DeMarcus Lawrence, and Lawrence has played in, I can't remember exactly how many games he's played in, well over 100 NFL games, and Zabel's played in none, so there's a lot to pass along there, and this is something that's been ongoing in camp for a while, apparently, so good to see, good indication. Earlier in this video, I mentioned that Milroe threw the interception to Emmanwori, but generally speaking, it seems like Milroe had a good day beyond the interception. He did do some good things. He had a big pass to Brady Russell down the seam. It was like a 35-yarder, and he also ripped off a long scramble run. So Milroe did not have a bad day just because of the interception. It's coming more in bursts with Milroe, right? He has some really bad plays, but he also has some really good ones. It's just a question of building consistency. But I wanted to emphasize, it's not like it was all interceptions. Speaking of interceptions, though, Drew Lock did throw an interception to Damarian Williams. Another guy that Condota calls out positively, Jake Bobo, a couple of highlight catches for him. One thing that is happening, like I said, because of Cross's injury, is that there's going to be some creativity on the offensive line. Josh Jones and Mike Jarrell, as expected, both got snaps at left tackle. The interesting thing, though, the thing that was a little maybe unexpected, Jalen Sundle got some work at right tackle. Now, everything I saw was very firm. Nothing's wrong with Abe Lucas. They just want to see if Sundle can do it. They just want to see if he can provide that kind of depth if he makes the team. And I think he's going to make the team anyway at this point because he's probably your backup center, I guess. I don't know who else it would be if it's not going to be Haynes, because also if Haynes does start at right guard, and I've heard mixed. I've heard this and I've heard that about Christian Haynes, but if Haynes is your starting right guard, then Sundle's going to make the team anyway. But Sundle got some work at right tackle. He was a left tackle his last year in college, so it's not particularly absurd. He just has his arms are kind of short, so I don't know if that's I don't know how viable that is, but they're experimenting and they have the freedom to do so right now. So interesting to note what they're experimenting with. Going back to Christian Haynes, though, he had 2 high snaps. Every high snap got him immediately replaced. So not a good day for him. Now, I think it was Greg Bell. I think it was Greg Bell who yesterday said he believes that Haynes is going to win the right guard job. He believes Haynes has pole position. But I think it was Nemhauser who predicted that Bradford was going to win the spot. So we've heard a variety of things there. And you've still got the Sundle element. The only guy who I haven't really heard any gas behind is Lomia. Still a lot of question marks here. Still a lot of things to wonder about as fans. But that is the information that I have. There's no consensus here. And about the only thing that I'm feeling any kind of consensus on, well, okay. Gray Zabel looks like he's going to take that left guard spot kind of without much competition. But I'm going to say that center is mostly belonging to Oluwatimi at this point. Right guard is very up for grabs. I feel like it's going to be Haynes, but I'm not completely convinced of that, man. No new injuries, no new absences. Jones, Griffin, and Hankins remain out for the time being. And the final thing that I want to talk about was this from Boyle McDonald after the practice. Talked about how the competitions at right guard and center are starting to come into focus a little bit, but the competition will continue through a preseason game or two before decisions are made. I should point out that according to previous comments made by McDonald, he was hoping to have this resolved by now. And what that means to me is that nobody is really, really knocking people's socks off. Nobody is taking the job so forcibly that they just kind of wave the white flag and hand it to them. And I think competition is good. I think that this team wanted to have this figured out a little bit better than they do right now, though. I think the Oluwatimi thing, the center position, is mostly ceremonial at this point. I think maybe they're not in love with Oluwatimi because they know about his limitations physically. But I think he's pretty much got the center job on lockdown at this point. It would be very shocking if anything else happened. If Oluwatimi doesn't get the starting center job at this point, it would probably involve something massively changing over the next couple of weeks. So I kind of feel like that's more of a technicality than anything else, but I feel like they don't really know what to do at right guard. I feel like that's still a big question mark. Neither guy is doing enough to really separate himself, and I do think that is suboptimal. I won't call it bad, but I'm going to call it suboptimal. The more time we have knowing what the first unit is going to be, the more time they have to work together and get familiar with each other, and the more opportunities they have to get better than the sum of their parts. I'm hoping that after the first preseason game, we know. Even if they don't tell us necessarily, even if they don't inform us, they know that it's going to be da-da-da-da-da. And those guys can just work together. And I know Cross is going to miss a little bit of time, so he's not going to be able to fully work together, but you want the rest of the guys getting synergy. And it's harder to get synergy when you're always subbing people in and out. And that's really all I got from today, but I think that's a lot to chew on. And it's certainly a lot to think about. All right, game starts in about an hour and a half from me ending this recording. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. And last day of the month. Here we go, people.